Hi everyone! So last week I made a video showing you my tarot deck collection, so this week I am going to show you the rest of my deck collection. This will be mostly Oracle decks, and I have one Lenormand deck. Pixie's Astounding Lenormand by US Game Systems. This is actually a super cool deck, and I'm not sure exactly when. I have a review of this deck already completed. I'm going to be posting it very soon. And this deck is essentially made up of a mashup of Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork. So a lot of the images come actually directly from the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, and if you're familiar with the tarot deck, you'll probably recognize the images in the Lenormand deck. So you can find out more about this through my review. Once I have that completed, I'll put a link to it below the video. If you are familiar with Lenormand, you are probably aware that it is a system unto itself. It is not the same thing as tarot. It is a much more recent, relatively, in terms of the time span that it has existed, system of divination. And I've found that I like using this Lenormand deck for situations where I want more of a clear, simple answer. I heard somebody once say that tarot decks are better at describing the why and the how, and Lenormand decks are better at describing the what. So if you really just want a very straight to the point answer or some very concise information, I found the Lenormand deck works very well for that type of thing. I'm not extremely familiar with the entire system of Lenormand, so when I use this deck I do rely quite heavily on the Little White Book, but luckily the Little White Book that comes with this deck is, where is it? Here it is. It's A, adorable, and B, very useful. So before I jump straight into showing you my Oracle decks, I want to talk a little bit about what an Oracle deck actually is, because I've actually got this question a few times from people. So tarot, as many of you are probably aware, has a structure that is somewhat uniform throughout different decks. Of course, different artists take liberties and they tweak the system of tarot, and there can be some differences throughout decks. But for the most part, when you get a tarot deck, you know you're going to have a certain number of major arcana cards, and you know approximately what the titles and sort of the energies of the cards will be. And same thing with the minor arcana cards. So there's, at least with tarot, like a skeleton. There's different schools of tarot, there's different systems of tarot, but there's sort of a somewhat like loosely unifying structure to the deck, if that makes sense. Oracle decks are essentially a free-for-all. When you pick up an Oracle deck, you never quite know exactly what you are going to get. It is completely up to the creator of the deck what types of cards they are going to include, what kind of themes the cards in the deck are going to speak to. So for this reason, it took me quite some time to start obtaining Oracle decks, because I was never quite sure, the way I am with tarot, that when I got an Oracle deck, I would know that it would cover this whole spectrum of energies. But I slowly started finding Oracle decks that, to be completely honest, I was drawn to because of the art. So I've started dabbling in Oracle decks. So usually what you'll find with a deck of Oracle cards is that each card will have a title, and that title will evoke some type of broad concept like friendship or healing or compassion. So the rest of the decks I'm going to show you will be my Oracle decks, and I don't have very many of them, but I do have 3, and as I was laying them out to get ready filming the video, I realized that all 3 of my Oracle decks are independently published, so that's kind of cool. The first one that I'll show you is the Tree Wisdom Cards deck by Lisa McLaughlin. It doesn't actually describe itself as an Oracle deck, but I essentially use it as an Oracle deck. I was drawn to this one, as is often the case, while I was scrolling through Instagram. I started seeing some images from this coming up, and I do have a very strong affinity with trees. I've always been of the impression that trees speak to me of spirituality. I think that trees do have a lot to teach us. So first of all, the image in the deck was incredibly beautiful and I thought pretty unique. And second of all, it spoke to my adoration and fascination and reverence for trees. This deck is also unique in that on the back of each card, it describes what the tree is, what the message of the tree card is, and then it gives you a little couple of sentences giving some information about how you might use the messages from that card. So I like this, I find it really cool, but on the other hand, it does make it so if you're trying to shuffle the cards and draw a card at random, you have to be quite particular about how you do that because right on the back of the card is the description. I would have probably preferred that to be in its own little guidebook, but other than that, I do quite like this deck. The exact themes that are covered in each Oracle deck do vary greatly, so I will typically try to do some research and make sure I know sort of what I'm getting into before I start working with an Oracle deck. So next up I have Connected and Free, the Alchemist Oracle. This was actually the first Oracle deck that I ever got, and a lot of you, if you hang out on Instagram, have probably seen this deck. It is quite photogenic. It's somewhat trendy. I don't mean that in a negative way. It just has this particular style that seems to be very hot right now. And this deck, I'll show you some of the cards from it. When I first started seeing images of the Alchemist Oracle, my immediate thought was that it reminded me a lot of the Wild Unknown Tarot with the style of the images. Even the handwriting is quite similar to the Wild Unknown Tarot. This was during the phase where I was probably at the peak of my fascination with the Wild Unknown, and I thought, oh my goodness, I want to get that deck because it looks like it would give a nice complement to the Wild Unknown when I use it in readings, and I was right. It does work really well with the Wild Unknown. Anyhow, I do with this deck what I do with pretty much all of my Oracle decks, which is usually the way that I use them is by pairing them with tarot. So I might do a tarot reading and then draw an additional Oracle card for an opening message or a closing message, something along those lines. Alright, and last up we have the Earthbound Oracle. This one was a gift from my super awesome sister-in-law. She saw that I posted on Facebook that this was on my wish list, so she got me this for Christmas. Another independent deck, as are all of the Oracle decks that I have showed you here today. The Earthbound Oracle has a very different vibe to it than the other Oracle decks that I have. First of all, I'll kind of show you for comparison. You can see how small it is compared to the other deck. The images in the Earthbound Oracle are really striking, and it has this very organic, earthy, of course being the Earthbound Oracle, feel to it. So a lot of flora and fauna, and it just feels really visceral to me. I'm definitely drawn more to that style than like the angel cards or something like that. I like that this one feels a little more connected to the earth, and it feels a little gritty, but in a really meaningful and positive way. So that is it for now. That is my Lenormand and Oracle deck collection. As always, if you have questions about any of the decks, if you want to see any further pictures, just let me know. I'll also leave a link to my Instagram below in case you are not following me on Instagram. I'm always putting up pretty pictures of my decks. So thank you guys for being here, and I will talk to you before too long. Bye!